Okay, my videos as of late have been a little longer. I've been trying to give more of my thoughts across some of these comic book issues, and I will do the same thing today. I don't know how long this will be. I try not to make it too long. I think I value my time, and I know other people value their time, although I understand that sometimes people watch or listen to a lot of these videos probably while you're doing other things. So it doesn't impede your time that much, hopefully. But I saw this story. It actually was brought to my attention about a day and a half ago. And I knew nothing about this. I didn't know this was going on. Eric July addressed this issue. And I think this is interesting. And I think this is actually a positive thing. I believe this offers us a different window into artists, writers, and how these people will be both hired and sourced moving into the future. So let's get into this article from Fandom Pulse. Eric July reveals comic studio cancels 15 Rippaverse projects because they became conscious of some controversies. And I wonder what those controversies were. I think it was mentioned on Eric July via Twitter that these studios did not enlighten him to what these controversies were. You can only imagine we live in such a space now that you can't have a contradictory opinion to the masses because somehow that puts you outside the camp. Anyway, a major problem for non leftists trying to gain a foothold in entertainment, especially the comic book industry, is the pressure faced by talent who will refuse to work for anyone the establishment deems a threat. The good thing about this, and this is where being independent, and look, this goes beyond politics. If you can create some kind of momentum, if you can put yourself in the position that you don't need these major industries in order to share your content, sell your content, however you do it, you're in a prime position. And I believe Eric is in a prime position. I don't think he needs these industries to get good artists and good writers. I think there are people that look, this company, in my opinion, is like a magnet. It's drawing people in. So whether these agencies allow their talent to work for him or not, I think is going to be really irrelevant in the near future. I think it's already irrelevant now. I believe there are many artists who work for this company that didn't come from the industry or the agencies rather. And I believe there are some that do come from some agencies. I don't know the inner workings, but is that really necessary? There are many artists out there who probably could do the work, but are not in the industry. And I think this provides an opportunity for those artists. And I believe he put out the call, and many people have answered that call and have submitted work. And I'll be honest, I think you're probably going to get higher quality artists. I really think you are. Just judging from what I've seen from some comic book companies, not all the artists are up to par. Eric July found this firsthand with his Rippaverse as a studio has quit because of controversy associated with him. So this is, crazy. People, and this is kind of an interesting thing. Like there's no way. Well, I say there's no way. I think it would be kind of hard to not know who Eric July is by this point. And again, this is in some ways a self-fulfilling prophecy. A lot of the mainstream comic book news websites are avoiding covering the Rippaverse like it is the plague, which is crazy because I don't know of a more Now, when I say independent comics, I know some people are going to bring up Image. I don't think Image is really independent in the way that the Rippaverse is independent. So I'm going to make my statement now. This is the most pivotal, influential, monumental, hardworking, independent comic book studio in the industry, hands down. Hands down. They're putting out a ton of books and they're working hard. Okay, Eric July built a giant audience off of his pop culture commentary and music background. Teaming with The Blaze, he propelled his brand to new heights before ever starting the Rippaverse. With his hit book Isom Number One, a comic that made millions and began an empire, he didn't rest on his laurels, but built an entire universe with the Alpha Core, Yaira Gooding, and more, as the company is on track to sell even more books in 2025 than it has in any year prior. And I believe thus far they have sold something like 250,000 books, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe I did see him say that somewhere. I might stop and look and see if that is the case. He's hired industry legends Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett to work with him, as well as former Marvel artist Bart Sears, teaming with the Saska sisters, who also penned a Black Widow miniseries for the Big Two comic company. With such talent involved and a line that has endless work involved, one would think any studio would be honored to work with the Rippaverse. It's practically guaranteed income for a long time if they do a good job. Yo, and anyone at this point turning down income, you are a wild person. I do not understand what you're doing. I don't know what you're going for. I don't know what your angle is, other than trying to bury the Rippaverse because you don't like the man's politics. Look, there's a lot of artists who I've heard do interviews that I'm just like, I'm not really a fan of this person in general. But this doesn't change the fact that their art, their books, whatever it is I enjoy that they put out, it's good. I'm not going to deny that just because I have maybe an issue with them in this other area. And it's really kind of a odd thing for me. I think I've brought up before that geeks always had a problem, or geeks have always had debates about things they like and they don't like, and we often don't agree. I mean, if you look at my comments, there's huge discussions sometimes about things I like that some of the people who have subscribed to my channel don't like, and we have good, robust discussions in the comments about those things. And not one moment do I think, oh, I don't like this person now because they don't agree with me. I'm like, yo, we are individuals that like different things. This is allowed. This is a thing. It's kind of crazy to me that you even have to state something like that. But people doing people things. This is just the way it goes. It says, the article says, however, success doesn't come without detraction, and Eric July faces a ridiculous online mob who attack his every move and dedicate their lives to hating his comic books. It's borderline mentally ill and led by several jealous former DC Comics artists who seem to want him to fail for their own feelings. I gotta say, I agree with this. I agree with everything said so far. The hatred I've seen for him, it's like, yo, if you don't like a company, just say, yo, okay, I don't like these comic books. I think they're trash, and move on. But it is like a continual, concerted effort of hate. And I'm just like, my goodness, I really don't understand the cause behind all this hatred. I won't even say it's comical. It's actually kind of astonishing. Like when I see it sometimes, I'm like, yo, I don't know if I've seen this level of hate for any comic book. Let me think. Well, there was a comic book artist back in the day, and I haven't seen his art in a long time. My cousin will know exactly when I say this because I just did not like this man's art. Jay Lee, not Jim Lee, Jay Lee. I did not like Jay Lee's art. Anything that man touched, I was just like, oh my goodness, I just don't like. That's just a personal preference. I had nothing against the guy. I don't know anything about him. Just wasn't a fan of his art. And I don't have a problem with that. You know, people don't like things. This is just the way things work. But this is just something else. It's led to some problems recently in as Eric July posted to X yesterday. For the sake of respect and professionalism, I will not name the agency involved. Yo, I respect that. As many of you know, the Rippaverse has a mountain of projects coming down the pipeline for 2025 and beyond. This creates a lot of opportunity for artists. I'm going to say something here. These agencies might be shooting themselves in the foot with this, and this might be a game of sabotage. Again, I would think it'd be odd that they don't know who Eric July is at all. I would really find that very odd and very out of place. But let's just say, for sake of the argument, they didn't and maybe found out. This might be a game of sabotage. Like, we're going to agree to do all of this work, have him make all of these plans, and then we're going to cancel at the last minute. What you've only done is you've sealed your own fate, because now he's going to go outside of your agency. And I imagine if I was starting a comic book company right now and gain, some kind of massive success, I wouldn't go to any of these agencies. I would not touch them with a 10-foot pole for this reason right here. You might be doing yourself in. You might be doing yourself a great disservice in trying to shut someone out. At first, they were enthusiastic about this opportunity. This especially applied to those looking for work at the moment. We eventually assigned about a dozen artists on 15 plus projects. This included pencilers, inkers, and colorists for both covers and sequential art. Some of these projects had already kicked off, and from what I hear, I don't know any numbers, but I hear the Rippaverse is paying pretty well, and I'm not shocked if that is the case. Today I received an email. The agency head from the agency head, that they are pulling all of their artists from their various projects. Why? Because, I quote, they became conscious of some controversies. I didn't ask what those controversies were, and it is unimportant. There's no sense in trying to work with people that don't want to work with you. This is true, and I respect that stance. He could have easily said, look, let's try to work this out. What's the controversy? Can we fix this? But he said, you know what? You obviously saw something, and within yourself, you said, okay, I don't want to work with you. And I get it. I will abstain as well. I won't say anything. I won't push any further. Go your way and go in peace. I respect that. Though this delays several projects, I wish them well and will not do anything to spite them. I bring this up as a reminder to all. We've seen a lot of success, but we are still up against it. Though the Rippaverse leaves its politics at the door, the individual politics of people like me, Chuck Dixon, and others will always be held against us. We all know what the acceptable politics are in Western comic book industry, and yes, we do. This is true. That said, some of it isn't just a left versus right issue. We always have people contacting, besmirching our business to our vendors, partners, and anybody that dares to say anything positive about us. And I'll tell you, I have had at times people who have come in my comment section looking for a brawl. Now, thankfully, I think some of these people have realized that's just not the kind of person I am. That's not what I'm about. And I have no problem with their negative comments, and we've had conversations, and there's at least one time I can remember that somebody made a comment in my comment section, and we, discussed things back and forth, and I just pretty much said that, you know what, you have a fair point. I disagree with this, a fair point. And I think at that point they realized, what am I fighting against? This guy has an opinion that I don't share, and he's not attacking me. Why am I attacking him over what he likes? That's pointless. And I could tell in the next comment, they realize that. And I hope we can get to a point where that's the thing. Like, you like something, that's great. Like the thing you like. I have no problem with that. Okay, where did I leave off? That said, some of it isn't a left versus right. We also have people contacting and besmirching our business vendors, blah, blah, blah. I think I read that. Some of these will even claim they are anti-cancel culture. This is why we typically only contract and work with Westerners that are close in proximity. They are either already fans of the Rippaverse or they're professionals that know of and support our vision. They are mentally prepared to handle whatever will be unfortunately thrown out at them simply because they work with us. Everybody else are Easterners and South Americans that are completely disconnected from a lot of the nonsense and cultural problems that plague Western entertainment. And I'm telling you, look, this again is going to bite the industry in the behind, because you cannot complain when a lot of these people in other countries, namely Brazil, come up really big and they become the big things. You can't complain in the Americas that all these people, you can't do any complaining. You didn't want to work. You didn't want to work with certain people because of their beliefs. These other people said, we don't care about your beliefs. Is the books good? Is there fan excitement? And amongst the fans of the Rippaverse, of which I am one, there is fan excitement. Despite all of this, I look forward to giving some hungry artists these projects. The Rippaverse will continue to grow despite the challenge or hurdles. Let's be great. Yo, out of this, I believe is going to be good. Yo, that's a crazy picture, Eric July. Yo, that beard is crazy. That beard has a beard. I like it. I think this is going to birth other people who are going to turn out to be really great. And there is going to be a lot of envy. There already is. Look, let me tell you what's exciting about this. When I was young, and I tell this story all the time, me and my cousin wanted to start a comic book company, or we at least wanted to get into the comic book industry. Now, I think my cousin still may be headed toward that route. I think he has some connections and he's doing some things. I'll have to talk to him. I haven't talked to him in some months now. Hit me up. Let me know what's going on with you. I believe he watches my podcast. But, it was a different time. It was the 90s. You didn't necessarily have the access that many of these people have now. And man, if me and him had access, if we had what people have now, man, we could have started something monumental. So to see Eric do this is this is exciting to me. I am excited for this dude, man. And I'm excited that everyone who seems to work for this company is excited and trying to bring us some good stuff. Anyway, it's tragic to watch cancel culture in action, even in 2025, at a point where even Bleeding Cool is recognizing Eric July's prowess in the industry. Wow, really? Bleeding Cool? Man, I'm going to have to go to Bleeding Cool and check out some of their articles, because for the longest time, and I think I've mentioned this before, I went to every mainstream comic book website and blog I could find. None of them even mentioned the Rippaverse. The only site that mentioned the Rippaverse was Bounding Into Comics. And then John Della Rose, another independent comic creator who's not a hater, started Fandom Pulse. And you see Fandom Pulse cover Rippaverse Comics. And this, look, you might hate all my coverage of this company, but I will say, I had already started reading comic books again. I stopped collecting for years. I just lost interest. And I'd already started collecting again. I want to say I stopped from 1998 all the way up until like 2011 or 2012, and then started collecting again. And when the Rippaverse came around, man, it took my excitement to level 3,000. I'm telling you, this company has really got me excited about comic books because I'm so invested. Okay, the books for the Rippaverse can't be considered to be offensive by any political standards, as he's merely presented a fun superhero universe, making the situation more ridiculous. And this is true. Look, I have read every book so far. The only one, and I've said this publicly, that I'm not going to buy is Bloodroot, just because horror, not really my thing. But I've read every book so far. And in none of the books that I think, oh, here's where they're infusing politics. It's just been fun stories. I just did my 3-part review of Gooding. Gooding was just a fun story. Eric July, however, noted that there are a large number of artists who responded because of the situation, leading him to comb through different portfolios almost immediately to fill the vacancies presented by this studio. And like I said, this studio actually shot their artists in the foot, because now I would imagine Eric July is going to build up a war chest of artists ready to work, and he'll never reach out to any of these this studio particularly ever again. You guys are not doing yourself any favors. He said in a follow-up, though I didn't plan this, I'm spending the front half of the day going through this mountain of artists that saw the most recent posts, reached out, and they are ready for work. And with the addition of Kanan White, their art director, I can almost guarantee you they're going to pick the cream of the crop. This is not going to be scrubs. This is not going to be scrubs. It's going to be the cream of the crop. Not all of them are going to be Kanan White level. I think Kanan White, as far as art, is the Michael Jordan of the Rippaverse. His art reminds me a lot of Jim Lee. No, he's not exactly like Jim Lee, but he has that level of detail and action in his line work that's incredible. Shout out to all of you. And this is one of the more awesome things, the success we've been blessed with. It creates a lot of good paying gigs for artists in an industry that many feel need to be rekindled. We move. Yo, kudos to you, Mr. Eric July. Respect, sir. I like what you're doing. It's good to see the Rippaverse continuing on despite setbacks and cancel attempts. Eric July provides an example to go forward and get the work done and not bow to pressure. It pays off to stand by a vision. This is very true. What do you think of the comic studio canceling Eric July and his Rippaverse? Leave a comment. Let us know. I think this is absolutely positively absurd in every way. Yo, by the way, shout out to John Della Rose starting this Fandom Pulse. And I like the fact that he did it. He built it on Substack, if I'm not mistaken. This allows for audience commentary, so it allows for more interaction. Man, the way the mainstream media is run today, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work for long. So I also wanted to do this. This is a video posted by Eric July on his personal YouTube channel, just about canon and continuity. This is a huge issue in modern comics. If somebody were to ask me, who was a fan or wanted to get into comic books, hey man, where can I start with Marvel? I'm not a big DC guy, so I wouldn't really be able to give too much direction. I know a little bit, obviously, because I love Batman. But for Marvel, I know for a fact, man, that's going to be pull up a chair. Where do you want to start? Because a lot of this multiverse stuff has made things kind of weird, kind of confusing. So anyway, let's see what he has to say.
I used to spend hundreds, yes, hundreds of dollars every single week on new comic books from the major
That's
two
crazy.
publishers.
I never spent
Shared
that
universes are my thing, and I love everything about them. But it got to a point to where just too many versions of the same character were walking around.
You're lying. I'm Spider-Man.
This is a problem that I have now personally with the X-Men, and I'm not gonna complain and moan and wail about what's going on with X-Men, but suffice it to say, I have not enjoyed any of the new X-Men comic books outside of individual runs, right? Like Wolverine Revenge, but the team books, for me, have not been good. And it's probably because there's not a singular focus. There's too many concurrent books running at the same time.
You're a mistake.
Now, it's not to say that this was a new problem. It was just too much for me to couple with all the nonsense that was happening in comics at the time. Too many different realities and characters acting out of character. It was happening in the comics and when we'd see them in other adaptations, live action,
I agree.
and such. I want to be very fair to the major publishers. Some of these characters were created in the 30s and 40s.
And he makes a fair point right here. And this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily take like huge issue with some of these comic books being like updated, right? Like, hey, we're going to have an updated story and maybe add some modern touches to the story. I've never really had an issue with that. Now, when you go away from the core of the character, that's when I'm like, okay, you have completely left this character. This is not even the same character. Like, if you wanted to do something completely different, just create a new character. Stop messing with things we love.
None of their original creators could have imagined that they would be core pieces of a universe for 80 years. They could not have.
That's crazy. And this, for me, this is one of the reasons why I always say I don't want the comic book industry to fail. I think these are staples of the American mythos, the American story. Comic books is one of these staples. I don't want Marvel and DC to collapse. Now, if it happens and they do collapse, it is what it is, but I hope for correction. I'm not positive that will happen, but I see some glimmers of hope. Let's put it that way.
Predicted that those characters would transcend comics and become part of the fabric of American culture. In order for your canon and continuity to be on point for that long, you'd have to take it into consideration from the start in every creation.
And I think this might be why I think I've said this before. I think both Marvel and DC need a hard reset. I'm going to be honest. Make me king of Marvel for a day. Like I said, I love Batman. He's my favorite hero, but I'm a Marvel guy. Make me king of Marvel for a day. One day is all I need. First thing I will do, every title, except for some of the Ultimate titles, just because I like them. But even those, I'm going to be honest with you. I would say, okay, after these, let's run these comic books out. We're going to communicate with the fans, and we're going to tell them every title is being canceled, and we're going to start over from issue 1, starting whatever year. Let's say 2026, issue number 1, X-Men, issue number 1, Spider-Man, issue number 1. The Avengers, issue number 1, Fantastic Four, issue number 1. We're going to start from scratch. And we're going to create a rules for continuity, right? Sort of how the Rippaverse has set up their code of ethics. And we're going to make sure from this day forward, we cannot violate this. We have got to stay in position. This gives fans an opportunity to follow along with all of our books. Now, you can have independent runs, right? Like, hey, we're going to tell this cool X-Men story for 10 issues, but you can't have that lead into some other X-Men book to take away from the concurrent run you already have. And like Eric said, they could not have seen. Look, when comic books, I don't know how much you know about the comic book story. It's an interesting thing to look into. When this first blossomed, nobody really took it serious. One of the reasons that, like, let's say Superman #1 and Batman #1 sells for so much money, I believe it was during World War II. They needed paper for paper drives, and a lot of people donated comic books. Comic books were thrown away. Nobody took these things serious, so you don't have many issues of those original books still in circulation, which is why they're worth so much money. Nobody back then knew that this thing would still be going in the year of our Lord 2025. Nobody could have predicted that. They did not see this coming. So I agree with him here.
Creator would have to be in on it. So while I do believe that avoidable mistakes have been made by some of those newer creators, I must be mindful of just how long some of these characters have been around and the era that they were created in. That said, what I reject is that this must happen. When I created my company, Rippaverse.
Right, and this is the problem with, I don't know the answer. I don't have all of the answers, but this is where Eric, being the owner and operator of this company, has an advantage over these other companies that are publicly traded, board of directors, owned by other parent companies like Marvel and DC, like Marvel and Disney, DC and Warner Brothers. Eric July owns this company. He can be nimble and move as he pleases. If like, that's why I said, if I was king of Marvel for a day, look, I believe I am 100% convinced I could fix Marvel. And one of the things that many of these companies are afraid to do is just apologize to the fans. Yo, do you know how much that would do to repair the relationship with the fans? Like, look, we have slighted you. I would put out a letter. I would do a huge press conference. We have slighted you. We have bastardized the things you love. We have destroyed the integrity of our characters, but it will happen no more. We will respect you, and we will redo this whole thing. We will start from scratch and respect the things that we have been able to build up because of you. The relationship could be fixed. Now, will they do that? It's unlikely, but I've always said there are glimmers of hope, and I do see glints of them catching on that, yo, we got to fix this before it's too late.
First Publishing, we launched a code of ethics. In that code
this was
of
a
ethics,
great idea.
Our commitment to canon.
Eric, I just want to say to you personally, I'm very thankful that you did this. You did this publicly. You're holding yourself to those code of ethics. When you open that Rippaverse book and you see that code of ethics, you know if they violate this, you can get at them. Like, hey, man, you said you weren't going to do this, and in this book, X, Y, and Z happened. Yo, keep them accountable, because I like these books and I want them to continue to be great.
In continuity. As some of you know, we brought in the Saska sisters as lore masters, and
they're
their
doing
job
a
is to
great
update
job.
our universe
The Saska
Bible
sisters
and make
are
sure
doing a
nothing
great
conflicts
job
with it as new stories come in. Look, as more stories get told,
that's something that the major industries, they couldn't have known at the time they were created that they would need. So, and to Eric's credit, he pointed that out. But now that you're at this point, you would think there would be an adjustment made, and there just hasn't been.
we won't be perfect, but we can at least have a commitment to it and prioritize this. Now, when it came to the mainstream and you saw these odd depictions of characters, the excuse was always that it's a different universe. Worse, some would suggest that it absolutely needed to be changed in order to appeal to a wider audience.
And that's the thing about the multiverse for me that just never, it never worked for me. Like, you can't just tell me multiverse. It's like, no, that doesn't explain why this sucks. You need to fix this. This is a problem.
But I think people sleep on the importance of canon and continuity, and I'd argue that anybody trying to be an independent creator should pay attention to it because it can only benefit you.
Agreed.
Nerd culture spaces care about this stuff. There's no
Agreed.
such thing as small
100%.
details. I'm not meaning
100%.
like in the nitpick sense. I'm saying that a fan of something has that attention to detail. I understand that people have these big aspirations and will take the first Hollywood or mainstream deal, even if it means bastardizing their own characters.
Yeah,
Sometimes
and
it's for the big.
that's one thing that I've always taken issue with. I know I've brought this up before. I read the book Ready Player One. Now, and this is kind of a different scenario because I believe Ernest Cline, who wrote Ready Player One, also wrote the screenplay for the movie. And there's things that were changed, and I get it. There's things that maybe due to time or whatever you have to change for the big screen, but there was some things in the Ready Player One movie that was changed so drastically from the book, like that first challenge, that it was too much for me. I couldn't take it. I was like, I don't like this. And it was a good movie. If I'd never read the book, that movie would have been fantastic. But because I read the book, I could not allow. I was like, I cannot stand by this. Why did you change this first challenge? I had such an issue with that. It was unnecessary. It was unnecessary.
Paycheck. Other times it's just because they want more eyes on their creation. But it is rare that something is elevated due to some change in a new medium. Normies like whatever the end thing is, so a fundamental creative change is needless. My theory is that this is partially the reason why comics didn't get that big boost alongside the blockbuster movies.
Yeah,
it's because
that's a
people
good
can
point.
see a character on the big screen and be intrigued by it, but when they finally go to the source material, they'll find that the character does not act, or in some
Yo, and this is very, very, very true. Very true. The very thing you use to get people in is going to be the very thing that buries you.
cases even look like the character that they're supposed to be, or the one that they just saw. That gives them zero incentive to become nerds of this stuff. And again, good luck keeping up with it, even if they were genuinely intrigued.
Yeah, I agree right there. I think that the problem is, I think people, the whole nerd culture and nerd space is seen too flippantly, as if it doesn't matter. And I've said this before already in another video. Many of us are what has propelled you to the position you're in. And it's almost like you've just said, okay, screw you guys. We don't need you anymore.
Wall to try to connect the dots and explain to someone that wanted to really get in on that character. In my opinion, the focus on consistency helps create definitive versions of the characters.
And that's another big issue. Definitive versions of characters. I don't want all of these 50 million versions of a character. I want the characters that I grew up on. Now, can these characters be updated? Can you change certain things? Can you add to the character, do little refreshes? Absolutely. But to make a completely different character, I struggle with this. It's a problem for me, seriously.
Holding you to a standard shouldn't be scary. It makes it fun and makes them more likely to support something out of the medium. So if your primary sale is comic books and you get the opportunity to make an animation, you end up being able to have one sell the other. This is what the
bingo, because it's all the same and it follows consistently.
Each does so well with their manga and anime. I've always found it bizarre that the West prioritizes what looks cool or the ego of these new writers over general consistency. And as I said earlier,
and I brought this up in a stream I did with my boy Don about Superman. Small thing, but why change the dog from what he is in the comic books? Why not just keep the same dog? I do not understand the need to make these changes outside of the ego of the people making the changes. I agree with him.
You don't have to be perfect. You will make mistakes, but I think your diehards appreciate this attempt. Paying attention to this shows the audience that you actually care and are invested in your creative project.
Yeah,
so I say, don't forget about the consistency of your characters and your world.
Man.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to head over.
Shout out to you, Eric July. I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is why I'm so excited about this company. If you have not figured this out yet, I want them to get more fans. I am going to keep making a bunch of videos about the Rippaverse as long as they keep providing entertaining comic books.